afternoon garage. So we're getting pretty close to firing this thing up. Like I said last week, I wanted to make sure and test as much of this as I could. I test the ignition system with the exception of, maybe the ignition wires and that kind of thing. But the distributor fired, so that's pretty good. And today we're going to test the fuel system. So what that means is, well, getting fuel from the tank all the way to the engine, cycling it through, and returning it right back to the tank again. What I really would like to do is I would like to flush these fuel lines out a little bit, and of course, hook up my new injectors that I cleaned a couple weeks ago. Make sure they still flow okay. So let's check out that warm-up regulator. It's located right around here. Yeah, here it is here. You can see there's really no mounting bracket for it at all. And in fact, it just kind of is loose. And then it's got this vacuum line here that's, well, it was connected to something at one time, but it's not anymore. Well, you can see that thing doesn't really fit there. It doesn't really belong there. Let's take it off, get it to the bench, inspect it, see if it's the right one. And if it's not, we'll get something that'll work. This shouldn't be too difficult to find something that'll work, and I'll rebuild it, get it tested. All right, so there it is. So this is a 0438140034 warm-up regulator. You go by the last 3 digits there. So this one here, it's a single port vacuum operated warm-up regulator. You can see it's got 2 chambers, the 2 chambers down here, and then this upper one, this one's just a vent. So this is the wrong one. I looked it up and it was for some kind of a Ferrari or something like that. And that's really cool that it's a Ferrari part, but I'm not going to be able to really use this because I don't know anything about the curves or anything. I'm sure I could adjust this and probably make it work. I mean, the heater's the same and that kind of thing, but I'd rather get something that's a little bit closer. And then this vacuum port, which you need the vacuum input from, actually smashes into the injector tubes, and well, it's not going to work for me. So I think I'm going to get something else.
1 week later.
Alright, so after playing, musical warm-up regulators, I deleted the throttle enrichment, the valve that goes on the butterfly valve itself. So I'm going to rely on vacuum enrichment to actually be able to run that. So I needed a single vacuum valve. I have this. It's going to go out straight towards the back. That works pretty good. And then this is a 033 instead of an 034, that last one. This one is actually for I think it's like a 76 or a 77 911. So this will be pretty good. It's for a 2.7 or a 3 liter, something like that. And I think it'll work pretty good. I was just going to use it as is, but it kind of looks kind of grungy down in there, and I don't know anything about it. So I think the best thing to do is, get it apart, and we'll throw a parts kit at it, and then put it back on the engine and see if we can't get it tuned. That's going to be a pretty good replacement, though.
2 weeks later.
All right, now a couple weeks later, I got a package from Germany, and it actually has the gaskets here. This is the pressure control gasket. This is the base gasket. And undoubtedly, these are going to be pretty dried up in here. But I was given something else here, and look at all this. They actually sent me new plated hardware, including the fittings for the banjo bolts, and actually new mounting screws for this thing. So I don't have to do any plating at all. So that's kind of nice. So let's get this thing apart and put all these parts in here. Now, once we get this tested, it may have to come back apart again. So I'm probably not going to Loctite these things until I'm completely sure that everything's good to go. But when we go to test it too, we're going to have to remember there's a vacuum input on it. So we'll apply some vacuum and see what that if that does, and see what that and see what that and see what that. You want. If that does what it's supposed to do, but hey, overall, pretty happy with this kit. So initially, I can see this gasket here is very pliable. It's not showing much signs of wear. I expect this thing's been rebuilt before. You can see the cleanliness and The hardware is all freshly plated, that kind of thing. This is your actual pin that sits there and adjusts the actual pressure. I guess let's get the heater out. Probably got everything cleaned up pretty well. Washed in the sink with some super clean, so we're going to have to do a couple different tests here. Make sure these parts are good. Namely, this is the heating element. It's supposed to be between 10 and 25 ohms. You see that's 23.7. And also, don't forget this. You have to check the this tab here. Make sure it's not shorted to ground in any way, which it isn't. And the next test I want to do is I want to measure the tab here for the plunger height on the vacuum enrichment. So the new one is 6.86 millimeters. This is the old one. They're just a little bit different here. You can see this one, this is the stock one here. We'll measure the height, see if it's the same. And that's 7.40 millimeters. So this is probably, I don't know, more than a half a millimeter off. I don't know how critical this thing is, but this is the one that was sent to me, and as you can see, it's got some kind of a yellow paint all over it. I don't think you're supposed to adjust this at all. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to leave this alone, and if I have problem maybe stumbling on acceleration or something like that, then this should be brought up. And also what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold on to this to make sure that I have it for future. And like I say, if the car doesn't run correctly, well, we may have to do some experimentation and find a way to get this thing up. But other than that, it looks pretty good. So I guess I can put it together. Also, I noticed that these screws here had some Loctite on them, so I'm going to do that. And also, don't forget to put the O-ring on the electrical connector. This wasn't too bad at all. All right, one more thing. I did make a little plate here that has some threaded inserts in it, so I can, well, mount this up. I think I'm going to have the vacuum line go to the rear, and well, it should make it fit pretty good. Let's go throw this thing on. All right, got the entire fuel system hooked up. And in fact, there's a supply and a return going to the car here. All my fittings are tight here. And I got the graduated cylinders in here, but there's no injectors on there yet. I think I'm just gonna flush the lines first. But first, before I do that, I'm going to flush the fuel system, the return dumping right into this jar so I can see what kind of comes out of this fuel distributor here. And well, let's see what happens. Huh. Not able to prime it. Well, what?
1 hour later.
Alright, did it a couple times. I think it's about ready to go now, so. There we go, yay! A little bit of sediment on the bottom, but yeah, that's not too bad. So we'll hook it up to the motor. We'll give that a go. Whoa! Now we developed a leak right here.
A few moments later.
All right, let's try that again. All right, I'm done flushing now, and well, I didn't get too much bad stuff. You can see there's a little bit of dirt in there. That's all right. I'm glad I got it out before I went through the filter though. But anyway, I set up my CIS test fixture here to where it goes to the top of the warm-up regulator. Then through here you have a valve here so I can shut it off and test overall system pressure. Goes to the warm-up regulator. So at this point, let's fire it up and see. I'll see what the maximum pressure is. See if that pump's working. All right, here we go. It's like about 77 PSI. About 5.3 bar. That's a bit much. I think I'll take a shim out of the pressure regulator. Inspect that O-ring there. Looks pretty good. There should be some shims right down the side of here. No shims. Oh, there's one in there. Look at that. There's a shim right there. Alright, so there were two little shims in there. Each one's about 0.5 millimeter, just like Porsche always does. So we'll leave one out. Alright, that's much better. It's about 72 PSI, or about exactly, almost about exactly 5 bar. 4.9 bar. Happy with that. Well, that wasn't too bad getting that fuel system going. You can see I got very little debris out of the fuel lines with that thing. Was it worth flushing? Probably not. I'd probably do it again though, you know, because if there was any debris in there, you really don't want those getting into your clean injectors and, well, screwing all that whole thing up. But it looks like that fuel distributor held pressure pretty good. What you didn't see was the camera wasn't on, and well, what happened was that plunger got stuck in there, and I really wish you could have seen it because the pressure gauge was doing circles, and it was like 300 PSI, and this thing kind of stalled out a little bit. I couldn't really figure out what was wrong. So what happened was it lodged in the bore there, man, and it got way overpressured. I'm really happy it didn't break any, you know, bust a fuel line or anything like that. That never happened, but that could have happened. So I should have been wearing my safety goggles. You can see that I blew out a line, blew out a fitting or two here and there, and well, that could have been ugly. One thing I would have done a little bit differently was maybe to have a disconnect, electrical disconnect on the fuel pump, because it was kind of dangerous, because what I was doing was I was just relying on the key. So I'd go over and I'd turn the key on, and then I'd run back over to the test area, and then if I had a problem like a leak or something like that, I wouldn't be able to get back over there to turn it off, and it could have been a real disaster. But none of that happened, thank God, but we had time to rebuild the warm-up regulator, but no time to test that thing today. You can see it was pretty simple. That rebuild kit was about 70 or 80 bucks or something like that, and well worth it, because like I said, it had all new fasteners, and boy, it was ready to go. But we'll see how ready to go that thing is next week. I think it's gonna have some issues, and we're gonna have to beat on a little bit and get her going. But hey, if you get anything out of this, give me a like and subscribe if you can. A lot more to come.